Let me get a little larger here because God knows you need more of me. And then I'm going to bring in Craig, who is out of town right now. So he's on his way back to the hotel, and so we can have a nice relaxed chat. When he gets there, I thought I would start, say hello, let everyone know we're doing this, and yeah, a little chaos. Bring it on. Bring on the chaos. I got enough coffee for days. All right, I'm having a sip of it right now. So I'm excited about today. Craig's just got crazy amount of wonderful sort of stories and experience with sort of space, looking back down at Earth, and has done some really really good stuff to get our planet back on track, so to speak. So, all right. Hey, oh good. We got Ashton, we got Paranoid, we got Too Many Goats, Embark on a Journey. I would like to embark on a journey. Jeff Haas, how are you, buddy? Nicholas Field, and good. So that's all working. I've got let me check the multi-stream. The multi-stream always feels like I'm in a Marvel movie. The multi-stream requires additional permissions to send messages. Okay, that's fine. Hear you loud and clear. Oh, good. Okay. The question will be whether you hear our guest when I get to bring him in as well. Let me test something right now. You technically, I should be able to mute this. Let me mute this and just see if it works so that we can. So that we can set up, because I think I'll spare you all of the anarchy that is involved in trying to figure out how to bring Teams people in. All right, here we go. So this should. You can't hear me now, right? Nah, nothing. Yeah. Did that work? So technically, that muted me for a little while, right? Let's see if this works. You guys are my tech support. Okay, good. Now you can hear me again. That's great. The OS. Okay, so I've got the Mac OS screen capture. Yes, you can hear it. Oh no, of course, there's such a delay. It's gonna be like, no, we couldn't hear you. We could hear that. Okay, we always could hear you. You are not muted. I can hear you. Oh, did not mute anything. Oh, that's good to know. Okay, well, let's have a look here. See what else we've got here. HyperX microphone. Yeah. All right, let me. The sound didn't go off. Oh, that's wild. Let me try this. So that works. Okay, so that mute works. But that's weird, though. Why doesn't the other one work? That makes me nervous because it means I'm going to pull in our chats. So as I do the whole Teams switcheroony, you may have to listen to us just fumbling through that. We'll see. Okay. Yeah. I think the deal here is that okay, doing something. We're used to the fumbling. Yeah, very good. I think there's also a really long delay. So I ask for your feedback and it comes back, Let's just make sure. I check. Oh, you know what I could do? Let me just do this. Go here. I'm going to go to YouTube. I also have a cold, because of course I do. Because why wouldn't I? Because that's what I do. Get colds. Okay, let's have a look at the channel. Okay. What does this button do? How's it going? Dinosaur Dave. Ooh, Destiny FX model. Ooh, cool. By now, you should be back. So are we getting 5x5 here too? Okay. All right, let's have a look. This is the fun part. Okay, so let's go to here. It's my little YouTube. Where's my little YouTube? All right. Genius. Let's just look at it as if this wasn't my podcast. All right, let's go to. Here we go. All right. Please feel free to talk amongst yourselves while I do my little computery stuff. All right. Let's see. And of course, that can't be right. Okay. Nice feature for the mic. I should get that. Yeah, it is nice. Michelle, I'm glad you could join us. It's very good. Too many goes. Nice feature for the mic. Yeah, it is. It is. It's weird though. It will turn itself off and on though. It's very weird. So, yeah, I will get an email letting me know when our friend is ready. And oh, there you go. I'm a Genius Podcast. There we go. We've got it. Yes, join the meeting now. All right, let me try this. Let me try this. I'm going to attempt to do that. I'm going to attempt to, while we're live, bring in a guest without screwing it up too bad. Let's see what happens. All right, so I will be muted now. Oh, maybe I can do, actually, wait a second. Can I do this? Wait a second. Let me do this. Let me do this. I'll put in a little picture for us just to keep us, keep us on track. Here we go. Look, I'll do this. Oh, there you go. Look at that. Okay, so I can do this. I can put up an image. Let's do this and drag that up to the top. Oh, this is exciting. It's like having my own little TV studio. Whoa, look at that. That is one giant eye. Let's do this. Okay. Oh, boy, it really is huge, isn't it? I do like that eye, though. I've got to say, the planet Earth in it. All right, so this is what we're setting up for. I'm going to go dark for a second here. We'll see, and I'll be back. I'll be back in 1 second. Okay, all right, here we go. Here we go. Let the games begin. Okay. Of course, with the mic off, I won't be able to hear anybody. So you will have to hear me for a second. Here we go. Okay, this is me. Don't worry about me. Just talking. Here goes. Almost there, folks. Almost there. I'm going to turn on this microphone, which should change things a little bit. Let's see what happens when we do this. Okay, now I've got your sound coming up. I've got my sound coming up. We're going to go to that and to that. And let's get you on the screen. Hello, Craig. How are you, sir?
Hello, David. Not too bad. How are you?
Where are you? Where are you right now?
I'm in Bristol,
Oh, great.
UK. Bristol, UK. Actually in
And what are you doing
Filton,
there?
which is my son's having an operation tomorrow morning.
Oh, no.
So yeah. So I'm over here just to be around him today and tomorrow.
Wait a second. I thought once they left the house, you didn't have to deal with them anymore.
No, no, no. That's not true. That's not true. They're always around, and that's good because they're really nice. It's
Oh, I
great.
know. It's lovely, isn't it?
It's
I'm
great.
mine's about to go to university, so I'm terrified. I don't know what to do with myself.
Well, no, what you've been waiting for. Well, it used to be when I went to university, when you wanted to call home, you had to go to a call box and put money in. And so when you ran out of money, it was very unfortunate, but probably relieving for me because it was like, oh, sorry, got to go now, mom. Bye. Beep, 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 beep. And that was that.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, that's
but
it.
these
As the
days it's
coins ran
instant.
out, it's so true. Okay, let me just check with
Yeah.
people, make sure that everyone is hearing everything okay. So, are we hearing Craig okay? Just double
Can you hear me?
checking. And I'm going to change my microphone setup here so that I can hear you better myself. Um, you're hearing me fine.
Absolutely.
Great.
Loud
All
and clear.
right, let me just check this out. Audio settings. That's what I want. So my speaker is now going to be external headphones, and I should hear you much better. How's that? All right.
Okay.
Oh,
Sound good?
fantastic. Fantastic. All right. So, hear you both
Right.
great. Oh, it worked. When technology, I don't know how you and your wonderful ESA people get these things into space and have them do anything, because even just putting this together drives me insane.
Yeah, but you've got to have a dream, and that's what you have. Your dream is you want to connect all the sound. Our dream is we want to get things into space so we can look at our beautiful planet Earth in different ways. So,
Exactly. Well,
yeah,
if you wouldn't mind, just for everybody out there, would you mind just letting people who you are and what you do, and then we can dive into it all?
okay. So, my name's Craig Donlon. I work at the European Space Agency, based in the Netherlands, in Noordwijk. I work at an institute there called STEC, which is a little bit like the JPL of ESA. So that's the location where we're designing and testing and supervising some of the builds of the spacecraft that we launch for a variety of purposes. And in my case, it's Earth observation, and I'm the head of the System Architect Office for Earth observation at ESA.
Ha! Fantastic. Well, so and you're covering a lot of stuff with that, but your sort of focus and your stuff seems to be more about sort of the ocean and ice seems to be the big focus for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an oceanographer, so
Mm.
I've been working in oceanography for about just over 30 years. That's really my passion. So I love to be, as I say, and I love to make measurements and understand how in particular, the surface ocean works, because that's where we're exchanging heat, gas, and momentum. So gas being CO2, the heat, we see slight warming of the ocean, which is where all the heat from the anthropogenic climate warming is going into the ocean.
Mm.
So it's a really fascinating area to sort of understand because it's super complex. I mean, if you look at the waves on the ocean, they're really governing how heat, gas, and momentum gets in and out of the ocean. So it's really, really cool. And we can see that really well from space with radars, with optical instruments, and with thermal infrared and microwave images.
And how do you go? I mean, I did you was oceanography the initial passion? Is that where you started?
Well, I mean, when I started, I was really passionate about climbing, actually.
Oh, really?
And so when I looked for a university in the UK all those years ago, kind of like looked at the pictures on the front, and Lancaster University was quite near to the English Lake District where you could go
Right.
climbing.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
went there. And
Really?
yeah, then we did a couple of courses there on planetary remote sensing, and that really intrigued me.
Mm.
And after that, I did a PhD with University of Southampton
Mm.
in the UK with a wonderful character called Professor Ian Robinson,
Oh, yeah.
super guy,
Yeah.
yeah, really, really good guy, and just built from there really. And yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, 74% of our planet is covered by ocean. It's
Yeah.
really, our planet is a blue dot. It's really blue from space, and that's a hell of a lot of water. So
So,
yeah.
so how do you go from climbing mountains to satellites, though? I mean, that just seems like quite a jump. Like, when you think of like, oh, I want to study oceans, my first instinct isn't like, how do we got to get in space? But of course, it makes sense.
Well, I mean, as an oceanographer, I went to sea quite a few times on ships.
Hmm.
And the reason I really got into space was, I mean, if you go on a ship and you go from the UK down to South Georgia, it
Hmm.
takes you 8 weeks. Then it takes you sort of like 48 hours to fly back via Ascension Island on an old TriStar aircraft.
Wow.
But it only takes about 42 minutes for a satellite to do that same trip.
Wow.
And the satellite can cover the whole of the world oceans in roughly about a day. If you've got a wide enough, what we call swath, a width of the images that we can take from space.
How wide
So in
generally
order
is
to,
that? How like what is the?
it depends on your sensor. If you want to have, you design a swath
Hmm.
by flying at a certain altitude and by on in space, and also by the way your instrument is configured.
Hmm.
So we have one instrument called the Ocean and Land Surface Temperature Imager, Ocean and Land, the Ocean and Land Imager, OLCI, which is
Which is
that
hard
has
to
a
say,
swath.
admittedly.
Yeah, well, it's easier to say Olchi than it is to say the Ocean and
Yeah,
Land.
exactly, exactly.
The,
Yeah, yeah,
the Olchi instrument on Sentinel-3, which is really an ocean satellite, the that has a width, a swath width, as we call it, of about 1,400 kilometers.
yeah. Wow.
So as it flies forward, you're looking at 1,400 kilometers of ocean, and it's flying fast. It's about seven kilometers a second.
But is that
So you're
usable
really
data?
covering
Like, there's
some.
enough stuff you can pick things up fast enough going at that speed?
Oh yeah. We optimize the cameras to work at that the velocity of the spacecraft, and yeah, it's hard because you need very good photon detectors. I
Yeah, I
mean,
imagine.
essentially, our business is collecting photons for
Yeah,
in space.
yeah.
That's what we do. We're brokers of photons. We want them. And if you imagine a photon that comes from the sun, in the case of an ocean color instrument like Olchi, it's
Hmm.
coming all the way from the sun. It crosses space and it encounters our atmosphere, and it makes its way through the atmosphere, bouncing off, if it's unlucky, onto aerosol particles or water vapor
Hmm.
molecules or gases, or it makes it all the way down to the ocean surface. It
Hmm.
gets refracted at the ocean surface and then starts penetrating into the ocean and it hits something like a phytoplankton.
Hmm.
It takes on some of the properties of that phytoplankton and it makes its way all the way back out through the ocean surface, all the way through the atmosphere. And instead of out to deep space, we're there with our big detector, which catches that photon. And it makes an infinitesimally small electrical pulse, which we amplify, and we turn all of that into an image. So it's a wonderful trick that the photons do, but we're big photon catchers. That's what we do in space.
But that's insane. Like, I mean, I know that's day to day to you, but that's insane to me. I don't like. I mean, that sounds like magic to me. Like, how do you? It's just like, was this technology available to you back when you started as well, or was there similar stuff?
Well,
Or
I mean, we call them, yeah, in a way. I mean, this is a conventional, what we call a radiometer. They've been around for a long time. It's measuring the photons.
hmm.
So it's just that the technology now is so good that we can, as you said before, we can now have detectors that are fast enough and precise enough and have a strong enough signal so that we can fly the spacecraft at 7 kilometers a second and still
Hmm.
catch all these photons in a meaningful way and make beautiful images. And some of the most beautiful images that you can see from space are of the ocean.
Oh yeah,
It's truly wonderful.
it's absolutely
It's
gorgeous,
truly wonderful.
and
I
it's
mean,
so
that's what
funny.
keeps me going, really. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, it's what keeps me going. I mean, if I have a class to give, I mean, always start with an amazing image from space.
Yeah,
You can see instantly who's interested because some people are like falling into the black hole of like, wow, look at that.
yeah.
And the others are like, yeah, so what?
I
Yeah,
remember
how'd you get
seeing that
that?
image from the moon of Earth and thinking that's the end of borders. I thought that was it. I thought forget countries, forget everything. We finally got it. Like you look at that, you go, we're just all it's all the same little marble. And I've
Yeah,
been very
yeah.
disappointed since.
Well, those blue marble images are truly amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, they're truly amazing. I mean, at the time, they're groundbreaking to suddenly realize, oh, whoops, was that it?
Yeah,
You know? And
yeah.
if you think about the Voyager images, which were taken, a long way out to the very, very edge of our
Yeah.
solar system. And,
Yeah.
Carl Sagan's great words,
Yeah.
that dot, that pale dot, that's us, that's all of us, everything.
You
So
must be a
true.
big Carl Sagan fan.
Well, I like Carl Sagan. I don't follow a lot of it, but
Yeah.
he had this great. To be a scientist, you've got to be a bit of a visionary, and
Mm.
he had a great communication skill and was able to marry both of those things, the science and the physics, but at the same time communicate. And that's the joy of doing science, actually,
Mm.
particularly Earth observation science. We get millions of images, petabytes of data that are available for everybody to use. And we have an open and free policy at the European Space Agency,
Mm.
but it's finding those gems now and telling the story about what's going on there. That's what's really amazing. And you
Are,
can do that in two ways. You can tell it from the science side, so the physics, the biogeochemistry, and you can tell it from the human side. How does that work for us? What's it mean for us? How does it help us? And the bottom end of the food chain there is it helps us because we understand the fragility of our planet, and it's in this delicate dynamic equilibrium. And the more we push the Earth, the more it can soak up a lot, but at some point it will tip. And,
mm.
you might hear about these discussions on tipping points where things could change quite drastically. So having spacecraft up there to look at these things and monitor the Earth is really, really useful for everybody. I don't think without space we would really have a full impression of what climate change is all about.
I,
One of the great things is that we can see the Earth in different colored spectacles. So we can look in the active microwave, we can look in the optical red, blue, and green,
mm.
we can look in the infrared, we can look with synthetic aperture radars and altimeters, many different ways of looking at the same things. And all of those measurements tell the same story, that things are changing dramatically.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm guessing you get the question about, is climate change real all the time? Is that something? Or I mean, I can't believe we still haven't
Well,
agreed on that. I, you know.
well, no, I don't get that question.
Oh, you don't? Oh,
Actually, I
oh, really?
mean,
Okay, all right.
no, I think the media raises that question a lot. This thing about having to have a balanced debate, but no, people don't
Between complete
generally
fallacy
ask me
and
that.
and the reality.
Yeah, I don't generally encounter those people at the moment. You see it in the media, but I think
Mm,
anybody who's pretty sensible can feel it. You don't have to have that debate. You just go out and this year and you can feel it
yeah,
already.
yeah,
Where I live in Leiden, for example, when we first arrived there, I mean, there was snow and ice. No, not so
mm,
much at all. None, in fact.
yeah.
Last year, hardly any. So people can feel this now.
So what do we do? So you're well, okay. Before we do that, before we get into the big, issues,
Yeah.
just go back for a second and you know when you're doing your job, what does that entail? What is a day to you? What do you do? What do you end up doing with your days?
Oh, it's fascinating, actually. I mean, the nice thing about my job is we're working in future architectures.
Hmm.
So what we're interested in is trying to understand, well, we have an Earth observation system today. We have a set of satellites that have been funded by different entities across Europe. So the European Commission funds the Copernicus program. EUMETSAT and its member states fund the meteorological program, so
Right.
all of the satellites that give us the weather. ESA, we fund on our side in Earth observation, we fund research science missions,
Hmm.
and we have some entities now working towards sort of commercialization and supporting what we used to call new space. I call them commercial space now.
Right. Right.
And my job is to sort of try and work out, well, okay, this is the architecture that we have today in space, and we've grown rapidly in the last 20 years. So we've put something there that's truly remarkable. It's really, really amazing what we have in space today from a science perspective. You can see so much.
Yeah.
It'll be a legacy that we can leave to our kids that they'll be plowing through for decades. Go, whoa, look at this! I found this, and look at that. That's the evidence we were looking for. How did they miss that?
Yeah.
And then the question is, so what do we need next?
Hmm.
And there is a bit of a challenge because that's okay, Craig, get your crystal ball out.
Hmm.
And I mean, if I got my crystal ball out 2 months ago or 6 months ago, it'd be a quite different geopolitical landscape than today.
Hmm.
Today's landscape with everything that's going on is quite different. So, our job is to try to foresight, is try to look to the future. What kind of worlds might we encounter, and what Earth observation data sets do we need, and what would the system look like? And the system being the spacecraft, the instruments, the ground segment, the flight operations team that control and fly the satellites. I mean, you really fly satellites. You have to really fly them. They're kind of like can be quirky. Yeah. It's
I'm
not,
sure.
it's not like they're going pretty fast, but they have different ways that you can
Fast
fly.
moving boxes in
Uh,
space. Yeah, it's like
yeah, fast
there's
moving boxes
yeah,
in space.
yeah.
But there's, depending on the altitude, there's still some aerodynamics to worry about there.
Oh, really? Oh, well, I
So
guess the sun would be low enough that you're actually getting. Yeah, okay.
yeah, there is some. If you fly very low Earth orbits, we had one satellite called Gotcha,
Hmm.
which was kind of a gravity ocean circulation experiment. This was a fascinating mission.
Hmm.
It has these proof masses, which are like something out of Star Wars. They're cubes,
Yeah.
and these are kind of suspended, and the satellite moves around them, and the whole spacecraft moves. And you monitor the movement a little bit of the spacecraft by the Galileo, the GNSS, the global navigation system of satellites, the European equivalent of GPS.
Right.
And you're looking at that, and from that you can work out what the gravity signals are
Oh,
from the
wow.
Earth. And the gravity changes, of course, as the water moves around the planet. It rains some places and it evaporates in other places. And you can sort of look at some of those sciences. Very different ways to do it. You can have satellites that track each other because satellite is continually falling around an orbit.
Hmm.
It's kind of interesting. Yeah, so foresighting, we've got to decide what do we need and why. Um, so the way we look at it is in ESA, the European Space Agency, we've got three different worlds that have been foresighted.
Hmm.
We've got a kind of a dystopian world, which is where people might live in megacities that are owned and operated by companies.
Hmm.
We've got another world scenario which looks at a just and fair world where we're living within the planetary boundaries that we
Hmm.
have. And, donor economics and that kind of stuff falls into that category, which is an interesting one. And then a really intriguing one, which is artificial intelligence has made some great decisions. We all trust it, and it's governing the world. And kind of everybody's bored.
Yeah.
And so, what do we need to do then? So they're kind of it's really then once you've established what's going on in these worlds, you have to decide, well, okay, what kind of Earth observation data do we need and why? And what do we need to maintain for the long-term data sets that we have? I mean, we've got some archives now which are 20, 30 years old.
Hmm.
And that in itself is really important because that's where your climate signals come from and the detection that you can do. So you want to keep those data sets going. But at the same time, you want to innovate and bring on the latest technology and all sorts of stuff, the unknown satellites that we
Right.
don't even know we need yet, but the blue skies ones, which are cool.
Yeah.
So that's the job. That's the job. And that
Wow.
entails talking to a lot of people, um, helping people to dream, dare to dream big and tell us what your dreams are because we have to turn those into reality. And of course, that's also the way that you get people interested, and in particular, younger engineers and scientists.
Hmm.
We have to tell them, dream big, because it takes a bit of time to prepare a spacecraft and dream early. So try to get your dreams out quick so that you can be there when your spacecraft launches and you can use it.
So
So
you're
yeah,
dealing with the
fascinating
first
job.
stage of engineering. You're dealing with the dreaming phase as well
Well,
as the practical
that's
stuff
part
as
of the
well.
job.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're dealing with the dreaming phase at the same time as the policy phase, where
Hmm.
people we need data, and people want that data. They want those measurements to underpin their policies. I mean, a policy maker is only as good as the evidence they can bring
Right.
to
Right.
show that this policy is having any effect.
Right.
And how do you do that for oceans? If you send a fleet of 10,000 ships out and
Hmm.
you have them go up and down the Atlantic and the Pacific, I mean, A, it will cost a fortune, and B, you would never have the sampling that you can get from space.
Were you talking about
So,
you were talking about them dropping? Was it a series of almost like smart boys or something? Was it you who was talking about that?
yeah,
Yeah, that because
yeah.
that
So
was
we can
fascinating.
see, yeah, I mean, we can see the surface of the ocean really well from space.
Right.
We can deduce what's going on across the full depth of the ocean
Hmm.
quite well by measuring the height of the ocean above a reference frame, from altimetry, for example.
Hmm.
But we have a tricky job to get measurements inside the ocean. So, I mean, if you imagine the Mediterranean, some of the oldest waters in the Mediterranean, it's very warm and it's very salty
Hmm.
in that
I miss it right
in
now,
that
to be
sea.
honest. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, me too. It's a bit cold here.
Yeah, me
But
too.
that water, even though it's warm, and you think when you mix warm water and the cooler Atlantic water, which is to the west of there,
Hmm.
you think that that water would rise to the surface of the ocean. the warm water from the
Yeah.
Mediterranean. But in fact, it doesn't. It sinks. And it sinks to about 1,000 meters and spreads out across the ocean in the middle of the Atlantic. And that's because the water is salty. So the
Ah.
salty warm water, it's the salt that makes it very dense, and
Mm.
that density keeps the water down. And it has a whole sort of set of circulation patterns around about 1,000 meters. And we talk about what we call Mediterranean eddies, meddies, that roll around at about 1,000 meters. And it's
Wow.
hard to find those. So that's kind of cool.
So
But
you're
at the
not going to
same
see that
time,
from space. So you need something on the ground, so to speak.
not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet, because someone's going to come up with a great idea, which is the unknown mission that I'm looking for, that will
Mm.
say, hey, if we use this technique, maybe we can see into the ocean this way, using this
What,
approach.
so like
So
salinity or something? You'd go with the salinity? How would you
we
even?
have salinity satellites.
Yeah.
We can measure surface salinity, but how do we measure the
Oh, right.
salinity at 1,000 meters? And
Yeah.
that's tricky.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where these, what we call Argo floats come in. And the Argo floats is an array of about 1,000 floats, which are about as tall as me, so about 185 centimeters.
Wow.
They're a lot slimmer than me, I must say. I'm a bit bigger than the Argo float.
I'm with you, buddy. I'm with you.
The Argo floats are quite a lot slimmer. But what they do is you put them in the water and they carry a suite of very precise conductivity, temperature, and depth sensors. So they measure the pressure. And you drop them in the ocean and they connect to space. And so like, hey, I'm here. How you doing? They connect. They say, good, right, here's your job. Good profile. So the float then sinks down to about 2,000 meters and takes a whole series of readings as it goes down, takes those measurements, and then it sits there for about 10 days and flows with the current at that depth. Then 10 days later, it pops us all the way back to the surface, making measurements all the way, sticks its antenna out of the ocean surface, and broadcasts all the data via satellite back to base.
Wow.
And that gives us these temperature and conductivity profiles. So the equivalent of launching a balloon in the
Yeah.
atmosphere, we send these Argo floats down.
Oh.
And some of them have some really neat sensors now. They've got very small packages of biogeochemical sensors. So in the
Ooh.
top sort of 50 meters of the ocean, we can get some really nice measurements of the biology.
Mm.
And I think this technology will grow. And we have about 3,000 of those that are maintained in the ocean at any one
Wow.
time.
And they just stay
And
out there
that
and they're
gives,
self-sufficient, or are they?
yeah, they're self-sufficient and they stay out there until their batteries run out, of course.
Right.
We also have gliders that we can use in the ocean.
Oh.
So these gliders can do really long trips
Mm.
and they can profile up and down. And when they come to the surface, we can give them a new task.
Mm.
And so off they go and they can sample. So autonomously sample the vast area of our planet that is the ocean in the water itself is really, really important. And we need to grow that a little bit more because it's when you bring that data together with the satellite data, typically through an ocean model,
Mm.
then you can start getting the power and the knowledge extracted in a different way. So
Because
yeah,
that's a lot of
that's really
data.
a big system.
That's a
Oh yeah,
ton of
that's
data.
a huge amount of data. Yeah.
So is this where
I
the
mean, the
AI
Argo
stuff comes
floats.
in, or is this all people? I mean, what's the?
Um, well, the AI is different. I mean, I think the AI is much more the artificial intelligence, machine learning techniques are much more about. I mean, you can use artificial intelligence to do ensemble predictions.
Mm.
So today, a lot of our ocean models and weather models actually are based on hydrodynamic equations, which are very difficult to solve mathematically.
Right.
They're very, very costly, and we don't do a good job. You need a lot of observations, way more observations than we've got in the ocean to solve those.
Right.
So the artificial intelligence approach, the machine learning approach, can do a pretty good job of sampling different outcomes. And so you can do probabilistic forecasts using advanced machine learning techniques. And there's a lot of work going on both in the weather forecasting community and in the ocean forecasting community to do that. But you still need to have something to give it. You need to still need to give it a sort of truth. And so the best estimate we've got from truth are the real cutting edge models that we run today in Europe, which are through the Mercator Ocean teams here in Toulouse in France. And they work together with European partners, the UK Met Office, the Meteor France, the Deutsche Weitenstadt, the weather forecasting centres there. So big effort from Europe to do this and bring it all together. It's
That
great though. It's
yeah,
really,
that's
really
exciting.
interesting.
And especially now because as technology becomes smaller and more compact and less energy requirements and stuff, you're going to be
Mm.
able to do a lot more of this stuff a lot cheaper, right?
Well, I mean, yes, in principle, but we always find new stuff.
Yeah, that's true. The new stuff. It's that's so true. That is so true. Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's like anything. When you get your car, you get your first car, and you're like, "This is so cool.
yeah,
I can go places."
yeah.
6 months later, my car's trash. I need a new one. I don't like color. You know,
It's
and
so
it's the same
true.
with science.
Yeah,
It's the same with
I
science.
would say it's
You
worse
know,
with science. The problem with that because
yeah,
it's advancing so fast.
yeah,
Um,
there's lots of shiny out there.
Yeah,
It's
there's
like,
a lot of shiny objects. So
shiny.
trust
Let
me,
me
that's
have
why I
that.
do this because of the shiny object syndrome. There's so many
Yeah,
amazing sort of technologies and people doing wonderful stuff, and I just
yeah.
want to introduce people to what the possibilities out there because I think in a lot of cases people just don't even know they can do this. That this could be something.
Everybody can, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, oceanography and Earth observation science, ocean modeling, making measurements at sea. Everybody can have a go at this. I
Mm,
mean, just dream, dare to dream. If that really tickles your fancy, get involved. I mean, maybe you can be the next person that comes up with the Argo 10, the
mm.
version that does X, Y, and Z that we haven't even thought of yet. So yeah, I mean, just get involved. I
How
mean,
do
all the
you?
people that are getting to the bottom of the sea are fascinating for
Oh
me. The
yeah,
ones that go
that's
right to the bottom
yeah. We know
and they
less
go to the
about that than we do
mid-Atlantic
about the moon.
ridges. Yeah, I mean they go to the Middle Atlantic ridges where there's all sorts of tectonic and volcanic
Yeah.
activity, and that's where we discovered that hey, you don't have to be carbon to live here. You can be sulfur.
Mm,
So the sulfur line comes down there, which 50 years ago was like, oh, you got to be carbon, otherwise you don't exist. Now it's sulfur as well. So I mean, who knows what we don't know yet? There's
yeah.
so much in there. Really, really good. Getting into the ocean is kind of cool. I'm a bit too old for that.
So you're not doing the dives anymore, or did you do the dives anymore?
No, no, I don't. I never really liked the dives.
Uh,
Never really liked the dives.
I find it absolutely terrifying, but just
Yeah.
was beautiful when I could do it. But so you've no impetus to.
Snorkeling, I like paddling around on the
Oh, I
top of
love
the.
that. Yeah, yeah,
This is fantastic.
yeah,
But the
yeah,
dives, everybody I know who's gone diving has always got bad ears when they come back.
yeah. It's
But
funny.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's like, yeah, yeah, it's fine. I just didn't look after my ears. Like, duh.
Well, and there's all that
Snorkeling's fine.
technology around it. There's so much stuff to deal with. I quite like just the snorkel because again, it's a bit like being the satellite. You get to sort of skim along the top
Exactly,
and
you
see
get the
what's
big
going on.
picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But I
sharks
get the
aren't so scary when they're
fascination.
like this big, way down
Yeah.
there. So
But I get the fascination as well. I mean,
mm.
if you're actually in the medium and you're floating around, I get that too. It's just not for me.
Right,
It's not.
right. So okay, well, so what is for you then? Are you on? Is this like a? Would you like to be on like a boat traveling around the ocean the whole time, or where's your happy place for
Yeah,
this stuff?
I like a bit of it. I like everything really. Many many things. I mean, at the moment we're organising through the European Space Agency together with NASA and the Trevor Platt Science Foundation a training course for masters and PhD students.
Oh wow.
We're on a tall ship. It looks like something out of if you were going to if you asked somebody to draw me a sort of pirate ship, it looks
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
It's a ship called the Skadalemko, which is run by a foundation out of Bergen in Norway.
right.
About 100 meters long. And in April, all of us joined that ship to go from Tromsø in Norway across to Reykjavik in Iceland, down through the Straits of Gibraltar to my home, where we pick up my boss actually, and then we go into Nice in
Yeah.
France, where we will be just before the United Nations Ocean Conference. So it's the mid-decade conference for the United
Oh
Nations
wow.
work towards Ocean Decade.
And you'll be
So
picking
my
up
idea
data as
is
you
to
go, or is
deliver.
it just a yeah?
Absolutely, we'll be making measurements all the way down. And my ambition is really to try and deliver 40 ambassadors, future ambassadors of open science into the United Nations conference.
Oh
Those being
wow.
our students, of course.
That's
So yeah,
fantastic.
just like we were talking about before, get people involved. I mean, when I was young, somebody somewhere was daft enough to say, "Oh, Craig, yeah, you should go to sea. Go, yeah, there's a boat place. Go and have a look." And I was hooked. I thought it was fascinating. I really loved being at sea.
Mm,
And I feel now that it's my responsibility to give others that opportunity to get out onto the ocean and go, "Oh my God, it's amazing. Look at this thing."
yeah.
So that's what we're doing. And at the same time, we're training people how to use satellite data, how to use model outputs, how to make measurements at sea, and try to bring all that together to answer some basic questions and train people about what it's like to live and work and breathe ocean.
Mm,
And you can't get much further than sort of, maybe a week out of Reykjavik in straight south. You're really in the middle of the ocean.
right.
It's a long way from anywhere. So that's also a very strange and beautiful feeling that you're really at one with the ocean there.
But again,
Everybody's
thanks
sleeping in
to
hammocks
satellites, I
next to
guess
each
you've
other.
also got communication. You
Yeah,
actually able now, you could never do before, right? I mean, that's
yeah, that's true. There is communication. The Wi-Fi is still not perfect for us on this ship. We're
yeah.
rather,
That's why I'm out. Forget it.
unfortunately.
You don't have good Wi-Fi, I'm gone. Yeah.
It's not brilliant, but yeah, there are communications and there are safety systems. The safety of life at sea is all very important.
So when
Yeah,
you
it's
say
fascinating. I'm really looking forward to that. It's
I
going
God,
to be
that
super.
sounds amazing. I mean, that's like a work colony right there.
Yeah, yeah. The only thing I can't do there is build my guitar amplifiers. So I like building old
Oh, that's
vintage
true.
guitar
Yeah, I guess
amplifiers
the
as
salt
well.
water is probably not very good for the amps, are they?
No,
And who
no.
looks
Well,
after the
and also
bees while
probably
you're
the
away?
noise.
Who looks after the bees?
Yeah, well, the bees look after themselves to a
Oh,
certain degree this
okay.
time of the year, but yeah, at that time of the year it'll be a bit of a nightmare because at that time of the year, bees are really waking up big time,
Yeah.
and they're producing a lot. They're rejuvenating their hive, growing immensely,
Mm.
and that's when all the honey's kind of starting to come in. And in the UK at least, you've got about 6 weeks to get everything right, and then more or less the 6 weeks I'm out when I'm out. So
Wow. So
my
do
bees are going to be my bees are going to be retorting back to what they really are, which is a wild animal. It's just that I won't be there to witness them this time.
right, right. You need to set up like a little handy cam or something just to sort of keep an eye out.
Yeah, well, people do that
Yeah.
inside the hive as well, so they can see what's going
Oh,
on.
true. Yeah, of course.
'Cause what you're looking for at that time of the year is as you're heading towards May, and the queen and the hive is deciding what to do. Do they reproduce
Mm.
as a hive, which is then the queen will produce queen cells inside the hive.
Mm.
And then when those queens hatch, one of them will survive, and the old queen will take half the bees away and start up a new colony.
Mm.
And this old colony left with the new queen, and all the bees that were left, they start again. So that's how the wild animal of a beehive reproduces, and that's really important.
Mm.
It's really annoying when it happens because it's like, done. There goes the honey supply when the
Right,
bees
right.
fly off.
Yeah. That's where my
But
grandfather would come in. My grandfather would go, he'd get calls from little old ladies around
exactly,
Kent, and he'd go
yeah,
and knock them into a box and put them in their hive.
exactly.
And
No,
yeah.
I've done that. I've done that. It's quite nice actually. They're very docile when they're in that mode. Actually, they don't sting you. Well, they don't sting you. They're just very docile. You
I,
go up there very
yeah,
calmly and carefully, and get your box ready, and stick of wood, and choose the moment, and you hit what they're
yeah,
sitting on. The whole
I
lot
couldn't
will
get
move.
over it. And
Yeah, it's
he'd
really
do it
cool.
without a suit on, which I think is madness. But he
No,
could
but when they're in that mode of swarming, they are very docile.
you can tell me that all you
They
want. I am I am the furthest from calm and docile myself when it comes to these things. I would be yeah, I'm sure if I could do it wrong, I'm sure I would manage. How did you get into beekeeping? It's got to be somewhat related to just seeing the planet and loving to be a part of it, I guess. Is that
I don't really remember. I can't really remember. We moved to Devon, and there was a lot of bees
yeah,
around.
yeah.
And a colleague of mine at the Met Office, I was working at the Met Office at the time. He was keeping bees, and I went along to one meeting, and eventually got some bees myself. And they're really fascinating.
They
I
are.
mean, as an animal, they're just beyond belief.
Yeah, I can't get
I mean,
over
what
them.
they can do. I mean, it's millennia of evolution that's in this little package called a bee.
Mm.
It's truly amazing what they can do. I
Have
mean,
you
the
seen
distances they can fly, the precision that they can
mm,
fly to and from a place, how they communicate, how they can use the polarization of the sky, and they have a little chip in their head which is sort of magnetically charged, so they know the orientation. I mean, this is one hell of a package. I mean, if we
yeah.
could build these packages in space, we'd be looking really cool, you know.
Ha. Interesting. So you want like a hive of satellites?
Well, that would be cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, a lot of people are looking at not so much hives, but constellations of satellites where we
Mm-hmm.
can actually make sure we can improve what we call the timeliness, so how quickly we can get information to people. and how precisely we can do that as well. I mean, if you've got an earthquake that's taking place,
Mm.
a synthetic aperture radar image shortly after the earthquake can really help the people that have to go in to actually find and save people and rescue people.
Well, forest fires
We
too, I
need
imagine
that.
as well, right? I mean, that's got to be
Forest
a
fires
huge
is the
thing.
same. Yeah, the fire. Where is the fire front, and how quickly is it traveling? Are there any fires that you've missed?
Mm.
But to do that, you need to have very fast communication
Mm.
from the spacecraft to ground, and then that last mile, as we call, from the ground segment into the application.
How
But at the
fast
same
is
time, it has
the
to be right.
communication? How fast can you actually get information out of a satellite now?
Well, we can do it very, very quickly. I mean, if we use what we call a direct broadcast,
Mm.
we are limited to, it doesn't take, it's seconds to get a stream of data down,
Mm.
but to get the whole archive from an entire orbit
Yeah.
of data, because you have a contact on the Earth, each orbit around our planet,
Mm.
we have windows of around 10 to 12 minutes when the satellite comes up over the horizon. Our antennas can pick that up and they track the satellite as it flies over. So we dump the whole data set there. But we can
Mm.
also use a mode called pass-through, which is that we're always acquiring data from the sensors,
Mm.
and we can dump that straight to ground. So it can be almost instantaneous. I mean,
Ah, as long as you're
it's nearly
in sort of view of it, so to
as
speak.
long as you're in view of the satellite and your receiving station.
So
But
it
then it's
doesn't
just a
seem like
question of
that's
how
going to
we
improve anytime soon, other than just to speed up the actual communications.
what it can do, it depends. If you have mobile receiving stations and you've got a direct broadcast satellite, then if in situ, you can get the data there and then
Well, I guess if you've
very
got enough
quickly.
satellites, you could just be, I guess, just blasting it around
Absolutely,
and
yeah,
getting
yeah.
it. Wow. So more
And so if you
satellites would
had
be good.
yeah, and if you have a constellation, you can do that. And then there are other things. For example, you can use one satellite that perhaps sees something
Hmm.
and it has enough, let's say, artificial intelligence on board. It can recognize, oh, that's interesting.
Hmm.
What's coming behind me? Oh, satellite C, D, E, and F. Oh, F is that's quite a good one. Uh, F, go sense there, and then the F satellite will move behind, and it'll repoint
Oh,
itself and
wow.
images. And
Oh,
we call
that's
that tip and
amazing.
queuing. So they're kind of like, and that's what I mean by the architecture,
Mm.
trying to get these things to work together a bit organically and cooperatively, just like the bees actually. They're all working together. And our constellation, our future constellations, and some of the constellations we start to see emerging now, they're doing this. They're working organically almost to make sure that we can get the information that we need.
It's so funny, isn't it? I
It's
always feel
quite
like we're
cool.
constantly trying to catch up with nature. Like that nature's got all this stuff sorted
Yeah,
out, and we're constantly going like, "Oh, what could we steal from nature that would help us in this regard?"
well, it's true, but I mean, we've been around for not so long compared to the bees.
Mm.
So the bees have had a hell of a lot more R&D, albeit
True.
their R&D is very primitive. It's evolution.
Mm.
So test this, test that. This works, so you keep
Yeah.
living. This didn't
Yeah,
work, you
that's it.
die.
Test this,
You
die.
know, it's kind of brutal. Yeah, test this, die, keep going.
Yeah.
But a millennium of doing this, whereas we're not so old. And certainly the Industrial Revolution, where we really started to work effectively
Mm.
as, let's say, superorganism.
Mm.
That's not so long ago, a couple of hundred years ago. Really.
It's funny we were talking about the bees thing. The thing that just jumped to mind for me was an amazing article I read about them using bees in handheld sensors at airports to detect things that aren't supposed to be there. And apparently, they literally have the cartridge is a bee. They put the bee in, and
Wow.
there's some kind of a reaction it has when it's being trained to detect these tiny amounts of particles, and the movement that it makes triggers an electronic response and alerts. Isn't that wild?
Well, I wouldn't be very happy with the bee, though. Poor bee,
I
but
feel bad
okay,
for
I
the
get it.
bee. I do feel bad for the
I feel
bee,
bad
but
for the bee.
but
But
maybe
I
it
mean, I
gets a
guess
little
the thing to
treat.
do is, yeah, it could be, yeah. But it'd be nice to extract what the bee is doing and then try to keep the bees okay.
Yes, as opposed to
We have
enslaving the
problems with
bee, it would be
bees.
nice if it could actually just we could just maybe take the technology from it. But
Does
I
the
was
bee
just
get to?
amazed.
I mean, yeah, but it is amazing. I mean, but it is a truly amazing sensor package that
Mm.
as a payload, if you like, the bee is a fantastic organism. It's just remarkable.
It's
And the
I
fact that
never
things
would have
like,
made that
the queen,
connection. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean the queen, the queen can even morph what's being produced by changing the
Mm,
pheromones and changing
mm,
the way that oil jet is provided into eggs. And now you make male bees,
mm.
and then you kill them all off when the male bees are finished.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's kind of
yeah,
brutal, right?
yeah. It's
Yeah,
yeah. There's
it's
nothing
brutal.
kind about nature, but it's fascinating.
Yeah,
Well, okay. So here's a question for
totally
you.
functional.
So we love the bees. Is there a bee equivalent in the ocean we should be looking at, or is there something like what's the? Is there a like a
Phytoplankton. Phytoplankton.
phytoplankton? Right, of course.
Yeah, phytoplankton is the base of everything for us.
But is that working in a collective, or is it every man for himself type thing?
Well, I mean, the phytoplankton are these tiny organisms that sort of, they're floating around and they have niches in different ocean regimes.
Mm,
But they're, and you get a huge spring bloom, let's say in the north of the Atlantic.
mm,
In fact, one of the tricks for us when we go out on the tall ship in April is we'll go out from Toronto towards Reykjavik, and there's a huge spring bloom there in the
oh, cool.
Norwegian Sea that takes place. So it's very, very rich, hugely rich, and it's amazing. But that's what's keeping the oceans going, and some would argue that's what's keeping our world going
Right.
because it's so low down. And if you ever get a chance to see these things microscope, man, they are so cool.
Yeah.
They are kind of like Alien plus plus.
Are they
And
better
there's
than
thousands.
tardigrades? Are they? That's it's hard to beat a tardigrade.
Tardigrades are kind of cool, but I would say that dinoflagellates are not bad.
Real
They're
okay. All right.
they're pretty cool. They're
All
pretty
right.
pretty cool. Tardigrades are cute, but dinoflagellates are just like, oh my God, wow. Thank
All
God
right.
it's tiny.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. How small are they? How like what's the what kind of
Oh,
microscope?
super microscope kind of tiny.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
Microscope, yeah. And there's some that are very, very small. I mean, right down to viruses and cyanobacteria.
Mm,
There's a whole soup of things. In fact, the ocean is the primal soup for all
mm.
of us. I mean, this is the core of our planet Earth. So, yeah, I mean, I'd say, yeah, it's the phytoplankton for me that's pretty cool in the ocean.
Does this put you off eating fish and things? Like, I mean, do you have to do? Is that those the sort of like? Do you find
No,
yourself changing
no,
your
no,
lifestyle
no,
because?
no.
No.
Fish is good.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
fish is really nice. Fish is good. I mean, our problem with fish is that now we have these vacuum cleaner ships that
Yeah.
just vacuum everything.
Yeah.
And then we have the crazy economics where, the ship comes in and clean them here and put them in another ship or an airplane and send them to another country where they're cleaned again and packaged. And man, it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah. What I prefer is a good fish market where boat
Yeah.
comes in, fish comes up, go buy fish, eat fish.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. And that tastes so much nicer as well.
Yeah. It does. It's true. Yeah. The frozen stuff's never the same. Never the
Not the
same.
same. Not the same.
So you don't
But
you don't.
I don't know how we manage that though, because I mean, the protein from the ocean is a sustenance for for many megacities. I mean,
Mm,
the ocean is a source of food, and being able to manage that blue economy appropriately is a very tricky game because the tragedy of the ocean commons is a real problem.
mm,
Who owns the middle of the Atlantic? Well, nobody. You know,
mm.
we know now who owns the Gulf of Mexico slash America. I mean, that's taking place. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but the Central Atlantic, I mean, that's the commons, and who's looking after that? Well, that's something that collectively we need to organize.
Well, that comes
How do we
back to the
set up
blue marble
moving
again,
parts?
doesn't it? It comes back to that whole thing
It
of
does.
like that's all of
Very much
ours.
so.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, very much so. I mean, the world is in this dynamic equilibrium where the biogeochemistry is fundamentally interlinked at every level. What we see as socio-geopolitics is kind of like the very top of that, but it's part of it. I
Hmm.
mean, at the end of the day, we're sacks of water with
Right.
some
Yeah.
red
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff in there, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
That's why I don't think we
yeah,
should be in
so
space. I don't like this whole this bags of water being flung into space. I like the robots.
well, the robots are kind of cool as well, but
Yeah.
I mean, you learn so much by putting
Yeah.
humans in
Yeah.
space.
I get it. It's
But
just it's always it's just we're just so much work.
yeah, it's just so much work. It's a lot of work, but it's super cool.
Do you
Super cool.
do any? I mean, you must find yourself dreaming about oceans on other planets and stuff as well. Is that something that comes up for you at all?
Kind of a little bit, not so much for me.
No.
Yeah, it's something to do a little bit more. Europa could be kind of interesting. A
Yeah.
couple of the other moons. So.
I
But
don't know.
yeah,
I mean, I should be more fascinated with our oceans, I suppose. But I keep finding myself dreaming of these other ocean.
that's the thing. I mean, I try to keep myself grounded. It's tantalizing to go there, and there are people that are working on missions that are doing that.
Mm,
But you're right. Let's focus on the home planet. This is where we
yeah,
live. There isn't anything else,
yeah.
and if we don't look after it, you know,
Well, and
Jupiter's moons will still be there, right? And we just won't be there to see them.
yeah, it's like it's the thing I've never understood is it's like this idea that well we should go somewhere else. It's like or crazy idea we just keep this place that was designed for us. Not
And
designed,
people
but you know what I
think,
mean.
yeah, but we have to promote as much future dreaming as possible. I mean,
Mm,
whether you're dreaming about bees or building guitar amplifiers or being a rock star or looking at moving to Jupiter, going to Mars,
mm,
encourage creativity.
yeah.
It's because it's all really creative, and we're just using different tools. I mean, artists use paintbrushes, oil colors, we use mathematics, but it's still dreaming. It's still trying to make sense of the world in its own way. And it is important to understand the vastness of space and its limitations.
Mm,
And so to understand what's happening on the icy moons of Jupiter is just as important in many ways as understanding what's going on in our planet Earth. Because by understanding what's going on in Jupiter's moons, we'll know that we need to really look after planet
right,
Earth.
right, right.
And there's always that thought that maybe there's something out there. And when you're staring up at night and you're looking into the deep darkness of space, you think, God, there's got to be something. Look how big it is.
Hmm.
But we haven't found anything yet. And
I
the things that
know.
look tantalizing are so, so far away.
Mm.
And this is all good stuff because home is home and let's look after home.
So okay, so you got to dream about this. You're a kid. You're in school. What do you do? How do you get into this stuff? What's the are there tools that they should be focusing on? Are there things they should what should someone doing if they're considering this in the future?
Well, I mean, start with Lego. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, Legos. I
I mean,
I do love my Lego.
Legos,
I gotta say.
yeah, Lego is really cool. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, enjoy your biology, enjoy your math, enjoy your physics, and enjoy being an artist. Don't just be a math. Understand why people paint and why people want to talk about poetry. Because if you're going to be any good as a scientist and an engineer, you're going to have to use those tools as well.
Yeah.
Engineers need good drawings.
Yeah.
Scientists need to communicate. Otherwise, you're just not a scientist. You're just kind of like some guy locked away in a room. You've got to have a
Just a nerd
thesis.
in a
You've got to
room.
make measurements. Yeah, I mean, to be a scientist, you've got to be able to have a thesis. You've got to understand hypotheses. What are we asking here? You've got to be able to make measurements and model things, and then you've got to communicate. So you need all the skills. So just enjoy learning.
Mm.
And if something tickles your fancy and you think, wow, how does that work? Follow it.
Yeah.
Today we've got this resource which is the Babel fish that we dreamt about when we were reading The
I
Hitchhiker's
know.
Guide to the
Yes.
Galaxy.
Douglas
It's
Adams
just called
is weird.
internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Babel fish exists. Just
Yeah.
use it. Ask it questions. Like Miss Frizzle says on Magic School Books. Make mistakes, make mistakes, make mistakes.
That's
Because that's how you learn.
yes.
How you learn.
That's what I say to my tech bandits. I was like, oh man, it worked. We didn't learn anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So
Like,
we don't want to make any mistakes in space because that's a bit costly.
well, that's true.
So we
Yes,
want to
yeah.
make mistakes in computer-aided design. We want to make mistakes in theory. We want to exercise models. We want to have simulators to make the mistakes in,
Mm,
so that when we actually do the real job, we don't make any mistakes.
mm. Any favorite tech? Any favorite stuff that you like? Go, oh, that's if I could spend all my time playing with that, that would be it.
Analog guitar amplifiers.
I knew we were getting to it. I knew we were coming back. We got the bees in. Now we got to talk about. Okay, so
this
so
is,
before we get into questions for everybody, let's talk about this because I was amazed to hear that you actually enjoy the process of taking vacuum tubes from ancient history and building amplifiers out of them.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a great digital modeling app. I mean, take the impulse response of any sound source you want, and you can recreate it with the appropriate tools, and it can sound great. You can sound like Eddie Van Halen straight out of your computer. But I'm much more interested in the totally non-linear weirdo process of using the old vacuum tubes
Mm.
and using those as amplifiers For one reason, and that reason is that they add harmonics onto the guitar sound or anything you put through them, in my case, guitar sound.
Mm.
So they become part of the musical instrument chain. They are instruments in their own right.
Mm.
And they're all different. Even the same designs, they're all different. Same, but different.
They have a personality
And
to
that's
them.
the fact. Yeah, and that's the fascination of trying to build them. No matter how hard you try to build them identically, they're all subtly different. And some of the old 50s, 60s, well, even earlier actually, skits that are still around are really kind of pretty clever. And
Mm.
they sound amazing, really do. You don't have to spend a huge amount of money to build your own. If you want to get one of these things that somebody else has built for you, then you do have to spend a lot of money.
Mm.
So
Because I guess it's the
that's why
time
I've
is
done
the
it.
times where the money
Yeah, at the
goes.
time, sourcing components and
Mm.
playing around, it can be time consuming, but it's really fascinating
I
because it is that sound that you get. It's beautiful.
I get it in that I love the concept. My wife always calls me a completionist. I want it's not that I can't just use something. I want to see every aspect of it. And I love
Yeah.
the idea of being able to
Yeah, yeah,
what is it? Was it
yeah,
Feynman who said that you don't understand something unless you can build it? I think that's that
yeah.
I
There's
live by that. I
elements of
love
truth in
that.
that. Yeah, yeah,
Um
yeah.
but so you're
I, I think also when I was a kid and I was playing the guitar, I could only afford transistor amps. And I
right.
could never get the same sound as the
Yeah.
guys on TV. They
Right.
always had a different sound. It's like, how do you get that? I'm tweaking and trying and fuzz boxes
Yeah, yeah.
and then I got a valve amp. I just turned it up and went, ah, that's
That's
what it
it.
is.
Wow.
That's it. And then you
So
can just have your guitar, a cable, your amplifier. That's it. And you
and
can
where
do
do you find the
everything.
tubes though now? Like, are they still being manufactured? Or are they?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you can
Oh,
still find most of the tubes. Some of them are getting a little bit rare, but
right.
there are
It's like
new
a factory in
manufacturers now
Russia
that are.
somewhere that still has a bunch of old.
Yeah, there's a lot of Russian tubes, but
Yeah.
there's also a lot of other tubes down in the States and in Eastern Europe. So there's a lot. In fact, some companies now are starting to remanufacture some of the tubes. It's quite lucrative.
Hmm.
They're not cheap. They're not cheap.
So when you
But a lot
say
of
you're building them,
hi-fi systems still
that's
use a lot of tube amps.
well,
Yeah,
that's my
because they're
son.
so
My
good.
son's just got into back to his records for some reason. So and I was saying like it's your list. What's the point of
No,
having that and then not have it and then having an electronic amp? I mean, it's
well, the thing about records is people say they sound better than digital.
I don't buy it.
Okay, right. But you have to understand why.
Mm.
I mean, the cartridges that are able to change the grooves
Mm.
and the little mountains and valleys in the groove of the record,
Mm.
that cartridge with a little stylus on the end has some characteristics.
Yeah.
If you were to use the full bandwidth of the music that you get on a digital CD or off the internet,
Mm.
the stylus would like go on. It
Right.
couldn't stay in the groove.
Right. Right.
So the Record Industry of America, the RIAA as it's called, the Record Industry Association of America, they have very tight equalization curves
Mm.
which define the sound you can possibly get from a record. And
Right.
it's not the big bandwidth that you get and the digital media, but it's this very, very tight set of curves. So there's very specific engineering that's necessary to keep the stylus in the groove.
Right.
And that's what makes records sound the way they do.
Mm.
Then, of course, the record is traveling much faster on the big outside diameter
Then on the
than
yeah
it is in the middle.
yeah
So
yeah
all your weirdo, very full musical content goes on the outside, and you're sort of like your other content that's got a little bit more space in it can go in the middle. So there's some very specific things about records, but they sound like records because
yeah.
they are made like records, and the instruments that are used to make the record and play back the record have very, very tight tolerances and characteristics, which are very different than CDs.
So it's the
And
limitation in a way that's defining the sound, and
yeah, and the
yeah.
processing of the music to keep the stylus in the groove,
Mm-hmm.
man. That's the
That was
thing.
that was
If
just a
you,
stack of pennies. That's how I kept them on the
yeah, 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 yeah. That's what I had as well.
I
It's just
I
stack
taught
of
my
pennies.
son that, and he was like, "What?" I was like, "Yep,
Horrified.
that's how it works."
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
you soon because I did the same. I got my record player out, and my wife Ruth said, "What?" I said, "Come on, it sounds great." Okay. So I got everything out to gauges, set it all up, put the music on, and then when I made a cup of coffee, it's like, doop, doop,
Yeah.
doop, and you get, oh my God, it's finished. What do you mean I have to turn it over? Okay,
That
I'll put it on the other side.
that's my thing.
And
It's
it
a
finishes
convenience
really
thing.
quick.
Yeah, that's my
Yeah,
that.
and then
Yeah,
I walk past the thing, a bit heavy-handed, and it's like, da-da-da-da-da.
yeah.
Oh, right. So not only is it like there's no endless playlist, and you have to do something, but you have to sit down.
I think there's a certain type of person too. I mean, I've got friends who actually a lot of scientist friends are big record fans, and I think it's because it becomes an active process as opposed to just a passive thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Instead of
yeah.
just like music going in the background, you're actively choosing what you're going to be listening to and
I
stuff.
agree. I
So
agree. It's a sort of, well, quasi-religious affair.
yeah,
You
it
put the
quasi
music
related. Very
on,
yes, yeah, yeah,
you have the cover,
yeah.
you imbibe the whole thing. And that's kind of cool. I get that as well. I mean, that's kind of cool. Yeah.
How much electronics did you have to learn to get into it, or is it more of a
Just talking to
yeah,
My dad taught me some stuff when I was a kid.
yeah, yeah.
He taught flashing lights, transistor switching circuits.
Oh
So
yeah.
it was always a little bit of fascination.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. I was the electron. I had the Ladybird Book of Electronics. It was fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah,
There
yeah,
was a
yeah, yeah.
they had a little board. They had like a plank, and you put these screws in with
Yeah,
copper.
variable. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
fantastic. Make build my own electronics kit. It was fantastic.
There was a little series of books in the UK called Bambinis.
Oh,
Yeah, that was the other B Bambini, and Bambini would do, electronic circuit for the motorist,
yes, yeah,
electronic circuits for the household.
yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's these little paperback books, a very eloquent old style language,
Well, they
British
also
language.
taught
Super
at least
cool.
electrical stuff in school as well,
Yeah,
right? They you had to
absolutely.
be able
Yeah,
to make
yeah,
your
yeah,
own plug and fix fuses and
yeah, yeah.
things. Yes, yeah, I remember that. Doctor Who
Absolutely.
for me was the big one. That's what got me into all the
Oh
electronic stuff.
yeah.
That's fantastic. Tom Baker. Between John Pertwee and Tom Baker, I was hooked on science.
Well, it's a combination of those two plus the radiophonic workshop of the
Mm.
BBC, which was kind
Ah,
of cool as well.
yeah. Oh, I don't know
Yeah.
that.
So the radiophonic workshop is where they were trying to pilot new ways to do musical sound. So
Oh,
they were throwing tech. So you'd have, you know, 50s ladies with flutes, and then they'd feed it through amplifiers and try and mess it up. And, Doctor Who, in those days, where did you get all the weirdo sounds from? Well, it
yeah,
was
yeah.
from the radiophonic workshop. Yeah.
Wow. Oh,
Both down in
interesting.
the
Yeah, I
80s.
didn't.
They really did.
I was in Canada, so we had it through PBS here. And what they did, which I thought was
Yeah.
very, very clever, I was talking to someone the other day who was saying that they actually knew this Dr. Dater who did the it was so because in England the shows are a true half hour, and here it's the
Uh-huh.
American thing, so they become longer because of ads and stuff. There was always a
Yeah.
chunk of time at the end, and they would broadcast these scientists and sci-fi writers and stuff to talk about the
Ah,
science
nice.
behind
Yeah.
each episode. And
Yeah.
so for me, it inextricably bound the two. So science and science fiction were all
That's
the same thing
cool.
to me. I loved it. I spent most of my
Yeah.
early youth
Yeah.
trying to make a sonic screwdriver. It just seemed like such a good idea. Um,
Exactly.
okay,
Well,
we should
look, the
probably go to
Babyface
some
just come
questions.
true, so the sonic screwdriver is going to happen. You
Yeah,
have got to believe.
I think
Dare
it.
to dream.
Yeah, I think there's certain elements of it. Well, they've got ultrasonic cleaners and stuff now. Like, I mean, I dive
Do
back into
surgeons
that.
have ultrasonic screwdrivers? I guess they do in a certain way.
I guess. Well, yeah. I mean, aren't they using? Yeah, they're using ultrasonics for like prostate cancer and stuff. I mean, there's all sorts of.
And all sorts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doctor Who. Well, and Star Trek, of
We're
course.
going to have one.
We should probably
Yeah.
go to some questions. Let me see if I can do this without
Okay.
screwing everything up, because that's what I like to do. Okay,
Right.
here we go. You're okay for some questions? You're how are you holding up?
Sure.
This
Yeah,
is so
yeah.
the thing I'm getting from you that I love is that basically you don't really if you're truly into science, you never really have to grow up because it's all just
No,
basically playing, isn't it? I
absolutely.
mean, it's all
Well, playing with a purpose.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dreaming, you've got to translate the dreams into reality, which is kind of hard work.
Yes,
I mean, there's
yes,
no way at every moment in your life, there's hard work.
right.
But, good hard work, if you've dreamed enough and you believe in it, it's easier
Yeah,
because you've got to write stuff, and you've got to convince people. But if you truly believe in something that you're trying to push forward because you think it's going to be for the good of the planet, and
mm,
we're going to be able to see things that we can use to kick the asses of our politicians to make good
yeah,
decisions,
yeah,
this is good. And even better, when the politicians come back like they do at the European Space Agency and they ask us and they say, we need this. please
Right.
help us collectively as member states of the European Space Agency. We want you to do this, and we're
Mm.
fully behind you. So, dream and enjoy. It's super good, and
Ah,
then the rest comes.
fantastic. Well, I mean, yeah. Look, you're talking to a guy who wanted to be Doctor Who when he grew up and ended up pretending to be smart on television. It worked out well for me, so I highly recommended it to everybody. Let's just see if there's any questions. If not, I've already got one that I see in the chat, which is a good one. In fact, I'll ask it while I'm looking.
Okay.
Favorite guitar.
Oh, favorite guitar. Oh my word! Oh my word! Actually, it's from the favorite guitar at the moment because it does change. But the favorite guitar at the moment came from a small shop in Leiden in the Netherlands called Guitars and Beans, which is actually a kind of like a coffee shop.
Ha!
But it's not the Dutch kind of coffee shop. It's more like northwest coast of the US kind of
Right.
coffee shop.
Right.
And there's lounge chairs and the guy there that makes the guitars, and he has some at the back and amplifiers. And I went in and there was this Telecaster, and it was brown without a glossy finish that he'd made with a beautiful neck. And I picked it up and it weighed a ton, absolute ton. And
It's a
I thought,
tree. Yeah.
it's a treat. And actually, this thing sounds beautiful. So that is the current favorite guitar.
Was that
I'd
next though? You
say
just started
that
building guitars as well?
no, I built a few guitars already.
Oh,
They're not
really?
so hard.
How did I? How did
Yeah,
I?
they're
How
not
did I
so
guess?
hard. The electric ones are not hard. The
Uh,
acoustic ones are really hard
oh
to
yeah,
do
I can
well.
imagine. Yeah, I had a
The
friend of
electric
mine.
ones you can.
A friend of mine bought me an acoustic guitar out of the blue. He was moving to another
Cool.
country, and his family that was their present to me. And I was like, I don't play guitar, and he said, you will. And sure enough, pandemic
Yeah,
hits. I sit down
yeah,
and start playing this thing, and it is I am terrible, but it is it's such a wonderful feeling to go, oh my god,
yeah,
that sounds like a song
exactly.
I like. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
so
I mean, to me, it's just a meditation where you
yeah,
just
yeah,
play
me
and you
too.
just enjoy it. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. I mean, I
it's
feel sorry
fun.
for the
It's
people who
fun.
have to
It's
listen
fun.
to me, but it's fun for me. That was Jeff Smith who asked that. Thank you, Jeff, for that question.
Okay.
Jen's got a question. Is it correct that removing CO2 from the air would not have a big difference or big effect the first years due to CO2 being released from the oceans to balance things out?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, you need a concentration gradient, not a big one, but you need that concentration gradient between the ocean and the atmosphere, which changes dynamically. So depending where you are, what time of day you're over the ocean, how close you are to what we call upwelling zones, the flux of CO2 between the ocean and atmosphere is highly variable.
Hmm.
But I think if you were to turn, I mean, there's a sort of residence time for CO2 at the moment in the atmosphere. You inject CO2, it's there for a very long time, which is why we're so worried it was a greenhouse gas. The
Right,
same with
right,
methane.
right.
Uh, but ultimately, it's a bit like recycling. If someone starts the recycling and the trend catches on, we can make recycling work. And it's the same with the CO2. We've got to stop producing the CO2, pushing it into the atmosphere because the ocean has a certain capacity, at which point it can't really take up any more CO2. I mean, we're just making acid. We know already the carbonic acid that we make is having an impact in some areas on the calcareous organisms, the calcifying organisms.
Like
And
the
so we're
corals and
already
stuff?
changing. Yeah, yeah, or the calciferous phytoplanktons
Huh.
and zooplankton.
So
So it's
how do we
really,
CO2? So how what? Is this an oil and gas issue? Is this a personal issue? Is this what's the how to what the CO2
well, I
stuff?
mean, CO2 is everywhere. Okay, we breathe it.
Hmm.
That's one thing. But everything we burn has got CO2. The things that we manufacture, you look around, you look at them out of plastic. I mean,
Hmm.
everything we touch has got some kind of plastic in there.
Hmm.
So the production of things, the
Hmm.
amount of things that we have is CO2. Moving to low CO2 economies is a challenge for our Western world today. I mean, stop flying, stop driving your car, stop heating your house. I mean, these are the brutal things.
Hmm.
What that translates to is let's find other ways of communicating. Let's find other more sustainable ways of traveling, other more sustainable ways of producing food, producing stuff,
Hmm.
not having so much stuff maybe. Um, So yeah, but yeah, it would take a while for us to be able to detect those changes
Mm-hmm.
because of this buffering effect of the ocean. But we from space would need to be very careful because we're at the limit of what we can do from space today in order to measure CO2 in the atmosphere. So if we're now trying to detect a decrease in concentration, our photon catchers have to be, our detectors have to be even better. So
Mm-hmm.
we need to work on the technologies to actually make sure we're ready to start seeing the decrease in CO2.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not such a fanciful thing. I mean, many people were saying when the Montreal Protocol on CFCs was affected that, boy, this is never going to make a difference. But we see CFCs have come down. So the policies can work, and it can work for
Yeah.
methane, it can work for CO2. So, and the world that our kids and their kids will inherit is the challenge, and we need to make sure we're doing the best that we can to
Mm.
leave them in a fair and just world. So
Yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be nice.
yeah,
Like you say, the dreaming's good. We gotta, we're working on it. Um,
I'm gonna do it. We're gonna try. We're gonna try.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. All right, thanks, Jens. That's a good question. Nixie, uh, Nixie's got a good one. What is your favorite thing that bees do?
Oh, favorite things that bees do. Actually, the favorite thing that I like with bees is when the young bees take their first flights.
Ha.
And if you're sitting outside the hive, which I like to do, and the sun's there, and it's a nice warm May, and the bees are flying in and out of the hive, and everything's smooth and tranquil, and it's great. And then you see these kind of like youngsters that come out, a bit like the dam busters, and they're and out they come, and like, oh, and then they go back in. So
That's great.
watching the first flights is I kind of like enjoy it.
Do they get
That's
any
kind of
guidance or
nice.
anything, or are they just like, screw this? I've tried it for a bit. I'm going back in, or are they?
Maybe difficult to know. Difficult to know.
Oh,
Yeah, but you can see the ones that come out because they're all like, oh, what the hell is this? This is a bit weird.
I think my favorite thing's got
So,
to be
yeah,
the fact that they can heat themselves up enough to kill wasps because wasps are slightly less.
yeah,
I thought that was just a. I
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
that is how nature figures that out is amazing. All right, good
Well,
question,
I think the
Nixie.
other thing then, the other thing then is in the winter when it goes cold. I mean,
Mm,
the bees have to keep the queen from dying because that's everything.
mm.
So what they do is the queen will be sitting at the center of a ball of bees. The bees will go into the hive as a big ball, and they can disengage their wings from their muscles, but they can shiver. And when they shiver, they generate heat.
Oh, so the
And
wings aren't
obviously,
moving, but the shoulders are still
the
going,
wings
type
aren't
thing, right?
moving,
Yeah.
and they're in this big ball, and they're just shaking and
Oh wow.
shivering to generate heat.
Oh
But obviously,
wow.
if you're on the outside of the ball, you're going to freeze, right?
Yeah.
So they have a clever system where this ball is they're exchanging. So you do a little stint on the outside, and then you can go back in and warm up, and then somebody else is
Ah.
on the outside. So there's this flow of bees that are going round onto the outside and then back in, like
Mm.
convection fans, a bit like in the sun, maybe.
Yeah.
But the ball of bees, and you have to be very careful as a beekeeper is the wrong word. I say bee steward because they're sort of wild animal, but don't go into the hive or don't go anywhere near it when the bees are in this state because to protect the queen, they will they will draw closer. And it's a thing called balling the queen, and the bees can compress the queen so much that she's dead.
Oh no.
So you've got to
Really?
be very, very careful. Yeah,
Huh.
it's called balling the queen.
Good lord. I mean it's I yeah, there's I can't get over the I remember a National Geographic book that as a kid, as a little guy, like I must have been maybe 4 or 5 years old. This wonderful National Geographic book about bees, and it was just all these close-ups. And I even
Yeah,
back then I was like,
yeah,
wow, this is like,
yeah. Now
grandpa.
my youngest son bought, yeah, my youngest son bought me a nice book like that, which is like bees through an electron microscope.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah.
And
Even
then you
even
see the
better.
complexity of this machine, which is like
Extraordinary. You know.
makes our spacecraft look like nothing in comparison.
Here's a crazy question. If we're worried about things like, you know, oceans mixing and all and temperatures and stuff, is there a potential future where we could, as you say, like come up with a bee like system that could be doing this for us, that could help move things around, or I mean, is that
Well, I mean, that's a hard one to answer. Well, it's a crystal ball.
Yeah, sorry. I just
What we can say
you
is
got
that
me
the
excited.
bees have been around, well, the bees have been around a lot longer than us. So maybe let's see which system wins out.
Yeah,
In a way,
right.
I mean, we have a society which is now global, truly global at the moment because of the
Mm,
way we are traveling everywhere all at once right now.
mm,
The bees are much more local. They're
mm.
organized on a hive. And yeah, I mean, I think we can learn a lot, but at the end of the day, there's one queen and she's a bit of a dictator. So,
Right. Yeah. It's not a
so
democracy,
yeah,
that's for sure. Yeah.
it's not maybe like where you want to be in the
Yeah,
end.
it's true. That's true. Yeah, you're right. Okay. All right. Very good. All right. I just, it's so funny. You just get me so excited about this stuff. It's just as you say, there's just so many possible ways to look at this stuff. It's,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
that wonderful
yeah.
shift of going like, instead of like, oh no, you start going like, ooh, what if, and
Yeah, yeah, what ifs?
that's the
Yeah, yeah,
fun part of it. All right. Jeff Smith's got another
absolutely.
question for you. Do you think the oceans have better reference data than the land? Did you get better data
Ah,
on that than land?
but I mean, obviously, it's kind of easier to get out on the land.
Mm,
You get in your car and you go, and yeah, you can make measurements. Now, there are other places on the Earth and the land, like Dome Sea in Antarctica, which is not easily accessible.
mm-hmm,
Uh, the land is fixed; it's not moving.
mm,
So it makes infrastructure and the maintenance of infrastructure, and therefore the characteristics of the measurements that you're making, a little easier. I
right.
wouldn't say it's easy, but a little easier. The challenges that we have at the ocean is just simply it's moving. And in order to keep something in the same place, you either have to tether it to the bottom of the ocean,
Right.
or you have to have a ship that stays there, which is moving all over the place,
Mm,
or you have to have a very fancy submarine glider system
mm,
that is hovering and moving around. And all of those things are being looked at. And likewise with the Argo floats. The Argo floats are super good,
mm.
but they only go to 2,000 meters today.
Oh, really?
Deep Argo, and the ocean is on average much deeper than that, 2,900, something like that meters. So we're not sampling the full depth of the ocean through Argo yet. For that, we still need to use ships, and we have to use a conductivity depth temperature sensor, and what's called a CTD, that we can send right to the bottom of the ocean, and we can take water samples and we can analyze those on board the ship or back in the lab.
Mm,
So I think the data that we do collect in general, not everywhere, but in general from ships is very, very high quality. And it's really good what we call fiducial reference measurements. So it's a
mm.
reference. And that's because it takes so much effort. It takes so much money and so much time to actually get those observations that you really don't want to mess up when you get there to the
Right.
middle
You
of
got to get it
nowhere.
right when you get out there.
You got to get it right. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's not. It's easier to make. It's easy to make measurements on the land.
It's just
I
different.
just think that it's different. You can get to the land a lot easier in general, and
Mm,
you can maintain things in general.
mm,
So the ocean's a tricky place. I think the Arctic and the Antarctic, the Southern Ocean, the Arctic Ocean, those are really, really difficult because then you've got the ice, the cold.
oh my God. Yeah.
Uh, so, but
Yeah.
that's also fascinating. Amazing things there to be discovered. In
Yeah.
fact, I
That.
believe that if you're a biologist and you go to the shallow waters around the Antarctic, I mean, you're almost not guaranteed, but there's a very high probability you can find new stuff,
Yeah.
new organisms, and you can name them after you. So
There
that's
you
the
go.
place to go.
You'd be a rock star
But
scientist.
some of the organisms there are very old. I mean, they're hundreds,
Mm,
super, super old organisms. There's some fascinating stuff from the British Antarctic Survey on the age and the character of some of the organisms that are living in very, very cold water.
mm. Yeah. These sort of
Amazing stuff.
extremophiles that we didn't think were going to be.
Yeah, yeah. Some of the sponges there are truly remarkable
Mm.
creatures. Really, really amazing.
Yeah,
So
the
yeah,
Canada's North
hopefully that
stuff
sounds
is always fascinating to me as well. There's just that there's
same. Yeah,
so many neat things going on up there. Of course,
yeah. It's
and we'll be
go
arguing over
ahead.
it soon, I'm sure, because as it melts, there's more and more shipping lanes and stuff.
Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
Actually, something we
Who's-
haven't touched on. Well, we just briefly touched on, but I'd be curious to get your opinion of this. Is the plastics, because we're seeing microplastics showing up everywhere. I'm assuming the oceans basically are riddled with the stuff now. Are you? Is there
Yeah, I
something?
mean,
Can you pick up any of this stuff with what you're doing?
well, microplastics are a big issue. Yeah, they're absolutely everywhere. Also, when you're wearing fleece, plastic fleece, and that kind of stuff is everywhere. So,
Oh,
we're all better.
really? Ah, come
Oh yeah.
on! I love
Oh
my. I got my
yeah, yeah,
fleecy
yeah.
pants on now.
Yeah, should be wool. Should be wool if you want it to be true. But there you go. It's warmer as well.
Really? Okay. All right.
But it's not today. It's really, it's not possible really today from space to see what the microplastics the way that people conventionally think. Even in the Great Garbage Patch in the middle of the Pacific, we don't really see it from space.
Mm,
And when you go there, yes, there are convergence zones in the surface ocean where stuff, whatever's there, will
mm,
amalgamate into mats, and those can be quite substantial. But in general, while the concentrations are higher than the almost pristine water around them,
mm.
they're not super high. So it's not like you're looking into a harbour where you see all sorts of stuff floating
Yeah. Yeah.
around in general. I mean, except for these very local convergence zones.
Mm,
But there is a problem. I mean, we're finding microplastics in everything. I
mm.
mean, we will leave this layer in the geology strata, which will be known as the Anthropocene,
Mm.
and that's part of it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we've been pretty good at digging up all the carbon and burning it to make plastic, and
Mm.
we're good at that. We're
Yeah.
good carbon burners. That's what I remember us for carbon burners.
Yeah. That's so true though. There's going to be just a layer of plastic that we're going to see in the embedded in the
Layer
rock.
carbon.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um.
The question is, how thick would it be?
Ha. I guess it
If you
depends.
think Mount
We've
Everest,
banned plastic bags now. We don't have any. There's no plastic. We don't.
yeah,
There's
but if
not.
you think Mount Everest is 8 kilometers worth of sedimentary rock, more or less, and
Wow.
each layer that's a year, how thick is our Anthropocene going to be?
Yeah. I guess it depends how long we stick
Yeah,
around. I suppose, right?
yeah, that's the point. Yeah. It's
um.
not going to be 8 kilometers.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, yeah, yeah, not the way it's looking right now. Okay. So other questions. If you had unlimited funds, oh, I like these questions. What kind of project for ocean research would you create? Like, if you could do whatever you wanted
Oh,
right now, you know, Elon walks up to you
oh,
and says,
that's
"Here's a few billion. What do you want to do?"
There's a few billion. What could we do? There's so much that we could do.
Hmm.
So much. I mean, I would love with the colleagues around the world to be able to really truly understand the way that the biological system works from top to bottom,
Hmm.
how it works from the sulfur all the way through to the phytoplankton, the zooplankton, the hydrotrophic. How does all of that work? How does the biogeochemistry work? And what's the variability around the ocean?
Hmm.
Really get into grips with the thermohaline circulation. Can we actually really measure that around the whole planet? Yeah, we talk about the thermohaline circulation, but wouldn't it be great to actually be able to measure it all at once
Sorry, what
and
is
then
that?
really
What is the third?
let's call it's the circulation of the whole of the ocean system. And kind of like the way it works is, I mean, the sun warms the equatorial waters of the Earth, which are a little bit closer to the sun,
Hmm.
yeah, because we get more sun. And then the oceans and the Earth, because the Earth's rotation is trying to actually get that heat and spread it out because it's
Hmm.
really cold.
Right.
So there's this constant striving to maintain an equilibrium. We want to get to lower levels of entry, if you like. We want to
Hmm.
get to higher levels of entry, where we balanced everything. And so the ocean currents in a way are driven by that. But in the north, when you freeze seawater,
Hmm.
you make fresh water
Right.
from seawater, which is saline. And what happens is that the salt is highly concentrated because now you've removed the water and you've left this very heavy, dense, cold brine.
Hmm.
Salt water that's very dense, and that sinks all the way to the bottom. And of course, when something sinks, something else has to replace it at the surface.
Right.
So you're driving a circulation, and this water sinks all the way to the bottom of the ocean and then travels back. And so we get this global sort of 4D circulation, 3D in conventional sense, but then there's time. And it can take 1,000 years for the water to flow around, and maybe longer.
Oh wow.
And we can see it in ocean models, but we haven't measured it everywhere all at once. We
Hmm.
don't monitor. We have monitored bits of it everywhere.
Hmm.
So it'd be really
Is that a political
fascinating
issue? Is it just that we
no,
don't
no,
know?
it's just really hard to do.
Hmm.
And I mean, our understanding of ocean circulation without ocean models, from an observational perspective, came from a set of experiments done during the World Ocean Circulation Experiment, where we took everything that we collected over a 10-year period,
Hmm.
and yet the ocean's continually varying. So, if we had enough money to try to understand how the ocean circulation is working, into which the ocean biology and biogeochemistry is embedded, which is intimately connected to the atmosphere because they're always interchaining heat, gas,
Hmm.
and momentum. And ultimately, this is a system that's giving us things like our weather and our climate.
Yeah.
So it impacts us. So trying to get a handle on the vastness and the interconnected nature across all of those different disciplines is what I put the mind towards. Trying to give that vision of trying to understand how our oceans truly work and get people into them,
Mm.
down to the deep, go and look at the stuff. We don't know what's down there.
So you need
Yeah.
need the millions of very smart bee-like probes being dropped and floating around and getting a
Well,
sense of
yeah, but
things. Yeah.
indeed, but they have to be done in the right way so that they don't leave more microplastics
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
they had batteries, right?
Oh
So
God.
they
Yeah.
need to be done in a sensible way. It's yeah, it's not it's such a big problem because the oceans are so big and
Mm.
so beautifully interconnected. Yeah.
Mm. God, that's amazing. That's it. It sounds like a very expensive project, though.
Oh yeah, but you said
You
unlimited,
said
right?
unlimited. No, no, you're right.
And I didn't even get to
You ran with it.
the spacecraft,
Yeah.
the spacecraft
Oh
on top
yeah,
of that.
I was expecting.
That's
Yeah, I was
equally
expecting something up
important.
there, but no, it makes sense. Okay, which of your
Yeah.
future architect world was the most fun to conceptualize? So, of your future worlds, what was the most fun to conceptualize, and what are practical applications for such an exercise?
That's a good question.
Mm.
Well, I mean, there was a foresight group of 100, quite a lot of people, 100, more than 100 people that were working on these different worlds. For me, I think they've all got fascinating caveats. I mean, the dystopian world of sort of, have you got enough money and you live in the city and then everybody else, like me probably, is Mad Max world outside. Um, Parts of that exist today.
Mm.
There are places where vast areas of cities are run by companies,
Mm.
and there are places where some of us are allowed to go and others are. So you can see a bit of that world already there. Now, this scenario takes it to a very extreme, and
Mm.
you really you can see if you live inside the bubble, then you've got everything, almost like a science fiction. It's a very good science fiction movie. That would
Mm.
be. So that was fascinating and is fascinating to try and understand the kind of Earth observation architecture you need,
Mm.
because on the one side you've got these cities which are eating everything.
Mm.
There are several books written about cities that roam around. I forgot the name of the book now, but
Yeah, there was
Immortal
the buildings that
Engine
pick
or
up
something.
and
Yeah,
immortal engines,
Immortal
mortal
Engines. Yeah,
engines, mortal engines, maybe. Yeah.
I think yeah, and they need they're consumers. They're big organisms, and then there's everybody else that's living on the outside. So
Mm.
you need to be understanding power, water. I mean, a lot of things come back to water. How is the fresh water going to be managed in the
Mm.
future? Where and how are the resources in terms of food going to be managed in the future, and energy as well? Equally exciting and perhaps more satisfying is trying to understand how we can live within the planetary boundaries,
Mm.
almost set by donut economics, if you like, because that's much more accessible and much more, you feel that you've got more control.
Mm.
With the dystopian sort of megacities, it's going to happen because you've got the dictators that are making it happen and they've got the money.
Mm.
But there's more, you feel like there's more control and you can do more and you can be more involved when you're trying to help the world live within its planetary boundaries, within the resources, and
Mm.
in a sort of just and safe world.
Mm.
So you learn different things there about how to manage the world. I mean, still the water is important, the food and the energy is important, but
Yeah.
there are other things that are helping make good decisions.
Mm.
There's a certain amount of machine learning, artificial intelligence operating in that world,
Mm.
and it's assumed that that world is operating because of the success of artificial intelligence.
Mm.
So that artificial intelligence needs to have the appropriate variables in order to make the good decisions, a lot of which can come from space.
Mm.
And then the third world, which is almost dominated by excellent decision making and artificial intelligence, needs a whole set of different inputs. And it's not clear today if we measure from space the right things. I mean, we measure, well, we try to measure geophysical parameters. We want to measure temperature, we want to measure concentrations, we want to measure ocean currents, etc. But maybe the AI systems don't want that. Maybe they want something else. Maybe they want some temperature divided by salinity plus how many eggs you bought last week.
Right, right.
That's the best input to get the kind of good decision at the other end. And that's a lot of work going on to understand, well, what should we be measuring to make the machine learning models really good from space? So,
Yeah.
so they all bring different caveats, right?
There's that fascinating discussion about the fact that, you know, we're constantly trying to feed these models it's like a simulation of the world. Like we getting as much data as we can to give it so that it can predict. And the reality is that we also need to consider the human aspect of this stuff as well, because if the machine models don't have that mortality, that you know, love, hate, all these things, that it's never going to get the model right, because you're never going to have 100% of the data of what's happening being able to be fed in.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, well, you know, I mean, it's like football games. I mean, what's the most decisive predictor? Is it the number of hamburgers, hot dogs, beers sold, the number of parking spaces in the shopping mall for other people that aren't going to the football match? Yeah, those are the kind of weirdo socioeconomic predictors that are really interesting, and highly dynamic, highly nonlinear. But super interesting. I mean, we
Absolutely
need to
fascinating.
get this. We need to get this sort of like data cube, this sort of hypercube together of socioeconomic together with Earth observation data, and get that space into this big hypercube that you can slice and dice, and the knife that can go through that hypercube is the artificial intelligence, because that's what it'll be really good at. It's got lots and lots of data to work with, petabytes of data in our case. But tagging, if you like, the Earth observation data and the socioeconomic data together is a big job. I'd say there's still a lot more we can do there.
It's funny. It's one of the things I noticed. I took. I've just. I'm going to flex for a second. I just completed my Google data analytics certificate. That's just because I'm a nerd. But the thing that really struck me about the whole thing, well, two things. One was the data cleaning. That is like 70% of your time is spent just trying to fix the data you've got, even when it's in a proper format, you know. And the other one was just how wonderful these AI models are at helping you with that process. Not necessarily doing it for you, but at least being able to go like, well, what about this and what about that? It can iterate very quickly through stuff. I'm in love with it.
I think exactly, and I think that's what I'm talking about, to slice and dice. You did. I mean, one thing I'd sort of caution. I mean, yes, they are helpful at cleaning data, but we have to be very careful about that. I mean, sometimes it's just the one data point that is the anomaly in the time series that has the answer.
Yeah.
And it can be very frustrating to try to, you know, as a scientist, sometimes you get attached to data in the wrong way. I mean, you know, the anomaly is either the thing that's really annoying you and you don't know how to get rid of it because you can't find a reason to get rid of it, or there's the rest of the data which you really need to get rid of because the one you want is the anomaly.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and matching theory to real data is where the rubber hits the road for true science.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to make measurements, you have to have hypotheses, you have to be able to model and do that because it's a super creative process. But how to handle data? I mean, clean, yes. Throw away, no. I would say tag rather than clean.
Yeah, it's funny.
Tag the data because somebody else might come along and tag it in a different way. And that tagging might be the thing that we need to drive the AI.
Yeah.
Itself. Do you see what I mean? We
absolutely.
have to think beyond what we're doing today to get it right.
It was one of the first things I encountered was I went through and had it remove the fields that were empty. And I looked at the results. I was like, oh, look at that. The bicycles are being used this way instead of this way. And then I went back and realized that there were whole sections that just hadn't been. So we just removed huge swaths of data that completely
Exactly.
affected the results just because we didn't have that data. So it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and when you
Exactly.
and even on
Exactly.
my tiny scale with data
Yeah.
that's the few gigabytes worth of text, I
Yeah.
can only imagine what it's like when you get into the,
Uh,
I love the tagging thing though. You're right. That's absolutely it. It's like how do we just make it easier? Just go like even just go weird. There's your tag.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
weird.
Well, I
But
mean,
that's
that's it. I
you know
mean, yeah, you're weird, my weird, they're weird, it's
yeah.
weird. I mean, how do you tag weird? But that's and I think here the large language models,
Mm,
in some shape and form, can help as a
mm,
standardization tool. Perhaps not the cutting edge ones, but the more refined ones that are stable and
mm,
not creating things, but are really quite low. Those can give us a vocabulary that can help.
mm,
But we always have to be careful. But I think these systems will grow and grow, and some will work and they will evolve like the bees in a way. Some strains will die, some will keep going,
yeah. Yeah.
and those will be the successful ones. And yeah, it's truly fascinating. But we have so much data.
Mm.
We have so much data, and we don't know how to handle it yet. And I think that's really the truth of the situation.
Well, there was a
You know,
stat that said it was like
the,
1.7 megabytes per minute per person or something at this point. Like it's an extraordinary. Like it's why I did the data
megabytes,
analytics course.
maybe even more. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, it's
probably
huge.
more.
It's
Yeah, it's true. Next week it'll be even more because something else will come out. Yeah, it's the
yeah,
reason why I did it was because I just
yeah,
started going like, wait a second, like it all comes down to this data. And also what I love seeing is like with ESA and NASA and stuff where people are going back, like you said, and looking at historical data only with these new tools and finding things out that they didn't, like
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
as you say, don't toss it. Don't toss the data.
No,
Um
no. And I mean, we had some very hard lessons with some of our early sensors where, in the 90s, I mean, we still had those things called fax machines, right? And the beauty of fax machines was that, yeah, you could send things instantaneously, it was super good, but the fax ink dies.
yeah.
So it just goes to white paper. And we're
Oh, you
trying to
mean the
recover.
thermal transfer stuff? Of course. Yes, yes.
Yes, it goes. It's
That's
just
not an
like
archive.
vanishes.
Yeah.
That's not an archive. So basically, we were trying to recover some early pre-launch characterization
Mm,
data for
mm,
an instrument called the Advanced Long-Track Scanning Radiometer,
mm,
which we managed to get from our little bits in Australia and across the UK, and
mm,
quite painstaking to pull all this together, and we could understand the particular anomaly that we had.
mm,
But it was in paper, but it
mm,
was ever so difficult to recover.
mm,
Now, a lot's in digital form, but still we have vast numbers of documents that are describing all of this
mm,
stuff. And, how to handle that in the digital age is just as challenging
mm,
and different than it is to handle the paper.
mm.
So it's tricky,
Well,
yeah.
and all those
But
different
trying to
formats
recover stuff,
too. All the different
yeah,
magnetic
yeah, yeah.
formats and stuff. I mean, like,
Oh, yeah.
what am I going to do with my zip backup now? Like,
If
so
anybody's got a working exabyte tape
yeah,
machine, let me know because
yeah.
I've got some exabyte tapes I actually do need to read. I
Oh,
can't find the
seriously?
exabyte tape. Oh, I can't find the exabyte tape anywhere, but never
But
mind. Send
I
me
mean,
whatever.
what's the lifespan on that stuff? Because isn't it gonna like eventually it's just gonna turn to rust, right? Isn't
I,
it?
I, yeah, but I kept it in a cold, dark box, and
Yeah,
it should be okay.
yeah,
It'll
yeah,
be
yeah.
nice to read the
That's kind of
tapes.
fascinating though. So you're literally looking for someone to go through that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
You
I've got,
wait.
I've got
Someone will
some
be. You
exabyte
wait.
tapes.
Someone in the chat will go like, "Oh, I
Got
have
ex-
four of those in my
I
basement."
have exabyte.
Yeah.
Cool. That's cool.
Do a shout out to Lance, who's got some great questions going here. Lance just pointed out that AI was being used to count like sea urchins. So basically, that they on corals and stuff. So that just
Brilliant.
yeah, again
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for
Absolutely. Absolutely.
gathering more data. Hello, Lance. All right, I'm gonna bother you with one more question. I
Okay.
could because I you've been more than generous with your time. What are some of your favorite and least favorite movies or TV shows that represent or misrepresent your discipline of oceanography or anything relating to that? Are there any
Oh,
you
oh,
know?
oh.
And I'm going to add books as
Well,
well. If there's anything in there that you've
yeah, well, I'm a bit. I don't have a TV. I haven't had a TV for years, actually.
Wow.
I have the computer. It's just never it's not been there.
Yeah.
Never really had one. So I use the computer quite a bit to watch movies here and there. And then maybe do I actually, I don't think I really watch movies that go with oceanography.
Yeah.
So more like Star Trek, Dune. I love the last Dune series,
Oh,
Game of
yeah.
Thrones,
Beautiful,
all
isn't
the
it? Game of
classic
Thrones.
stuff, these kind of things. I
Yeah.
mean, so yeah, I mean, yeah, those are the kind of movies I like. Yeah. I'd like to go and see Conclave actually. That's got some good
Conclave was great.
reviews.
I was really surprised because I wasn't really
Did you see
interested
it?
in that. Yeah, I wasn't
No, I'm
really.
not interested, but I just see it's got a lot. I'm not interested in the content as such, but the
No, but I
reviews are
loved it.
so good.
I
It's like,
loved it.
I need to go see
Honestly,
this.
it's like it comes across a bit like a thriller, which I was quite surprised. Like,
Yeah. Okay.
and could be topical because our the that Pope fella is not. He's got pneumonia right now, or double pneumonia or
No,
something.
he's that's fine. Yeah, no, we'll
Yeah.
be looking
No,
at
it's a great movie.
fingers crossed, man.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
That's a fun one. Any books?
Yes,
Are you
that's a good
reading?
question.
Any?
Well, the Asimovs I like,
Oh
those
yeah.
classical science fictions,
Yeah.
those ones to go back to. I've got the current book I got, which I'm looking at, was from a museum in Oslo, which is actually about the Arctic.
Oh
It's a
yeah.
sort of museum collection. They run a British museum centre collection to the museum in Oslo.
Mm.
And this book is I found fascinating. It's got stories and artifacts, and the stories behind the
Oh,
artifacts are
wow.
really good. And that
What's it
takes me
called?
to what I
What's
really
the book
do
called?
like. It's just called the Arctic. It's
Oh,
just
yeah,
called the
okay.
Arctic, yeah. But that takes me to what I do actually really enjoy, and I listen to a lot of radio, talk radio. We have Radio 4, which I still listen
Oh
to.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
rag, in our time that you can learn a lot from. And then there was a wonderful series of The World in 100 Objects, which takes objects from all around the world,
Mm.
and they're sort of 20, 30-minute programs on the radio, and they just take you through a description, because
Mm.
it's radio, you have to imagine this,
Mm.
and then how these objects, and it might be, the tooth that was found next to a sword, why is it important? This is all first bit of pottery, or,
Yeah.
really fascinating stuff. So a lot of radio, I do listen to a lot of talk radio. I find that really relaxing, interesting, and engaging. You close your eyes and
Mm.
it's a
It's
bit like an audiobook,
podcasts.
but live.
Podcasts for
Yeah,
me.
podcasting,
But
yeah.
I do a lot of BBC podcasts because we don't get the BBC here other than in a sort of a podcast
Yeah,
format. But the BBC's always been amazing with their science content stuff. Like I can't
yeah,
get over.
it's really good.
I feel like there's a level of education in the UK that I just don't see here, and I say here in North America. I think people seem to either focus on it or it's it's just there's a basics that seem to be a basic interest that is being pushed by the BBC, which I love it.
Yeah, yeah. I think things live and die by their audiences. I think the BBC make programs. I'm not part of the BBC, but I presume that they're making programs because people have an appetite for it. And I think
Yeah.
there's a curiosity.
Hmm.
My wife, she's a potter, and she made me a coffee cup, a small one, which says, stay curious. And I take my
Yes.
coffee every morning with
Oh,
it
I
because
love it.
that's what it's all about. Stay
Yes.
curious.
That's curiosity.
And the other one,
That's
the
it.
other
Like
one is drink more coffee, but stay curious is what
I
it's all
can't drink
about.
much more than this. Look at this. That's all
Oh,
coffee,
yeah,
my
yeah,
friend.
there you go. There you
Um,
go.
yeah, the curiosity thing is because to me that's like it's like that comes back to your thing where it's I'm obsessed with this because I hated school. I couldn't deal with it. I got out as soon as I could, and I'm lucky it worked out for me. But I always loved learning. And I
Yeah,
feel like we're at a stage now where you almost don't need to teach people stuff. You just need to get them excited enough to look into it because there's so many
yeah,
resources out there for people. The entire collective knowledge of the human race is there. You just have to get kids or people excited enough
yeah.
to want to look into it. Um,
In a way, I think that's true. I think there's how to learn. I think if
yeah,
you can teach people how to learn, and
yeah,
maybe that was the trick where, when we were at school age, the how to learn elements weren't there. There was a teacher who was boss, and they would teach you, and you would
mm,
listen or you'd be kicked out.
yeah,
Today, there's much more emphasis on making sure that there is a curiosity in how
mm,
you learn. And like I say, for me, trying to get students out onto the ocean,
yeah,
for me, the priority is they will learn so much just by being there about
mm,
themselves, about the ocean, how to interact, how to work, how complicated the ocean surface is, how difficult it is to run a ship.
mm,
But hopefully at the end of that, they'll feel such a sense of achievement,
Yeah.
and they'll really gain so much from it. And deep down inside, I'm hoping, because some of them they've got good math and physics degrees and biogeochemistry degrees. I hope that when they try to get grabbed by the banking, finance, economics
Mm,
world, that they'll think back to this trip and they'll say, "Oh, I remember when I went on that tall ship. I
yeah.
wanted to stay there. It's a bit less salary, but that was so cool."
Well,
So if we can achieve that, I'll be so happy.
the other thing about that though too is that I think that there's often you don't realize how important those things are necessarily at the time because it's
Yeah,
your life. It's like you're young, this is all new,
exactly.
And I think that even if you could just plant those seeds so that if they do end up going to, the corporations, once they've got some money and some clout, they actually then come back to it and want to do something to help. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the other.
Or maybe even in the corporations that make some good sound decisions to protect our planet and the earth and our oceans. So
It feels
yeah,
like a
it'll
good
work.
choice because it's hard to sell
Yeah,
people things if there's no people.
well, that's true.
I mean, it
This
feels
is
like a good
very true.
economic decision.
That's
Um,
basic human.
uh,
Yeah.
Craig, thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to share with people about? Like, is there something you'd like people to go to look at? Is there anything anything you want to promote or talk about before we
No, I
wrap it
mean,
up?
take a look at the European Space Agency.
Oh
It's
yeah,
uh, it's
yeah.
it's your space agency. It does many different things, from astronauts to Earth observation, technology, and there are jobs and there are opportunities. There are ways to work with us, and we love working with super ideas. So come talk to us, and we'll try to help you translate your energy into something that might fly to space one day, or maybe even you will go to space one day.
Oh,
So take a look there.
I could go for weightless. I could definitely, yeah. I think it might be a little late for me. There's a little too much weight for
Well,
weightless
I
at this
don't know.
point.
You could go on the Vomit Comet. You've
Yeah.
seen the Vomit Comet?
Oh God, yeah.
The
That just looks
the
like hell to
airplane
me.
that does the parabatic
That's just,
flights.
oh God, it's like the worst of all worlds in my mind.
Uh,
And if people want to get in touch, are you a Twitter person? Are you a,
yeah,
a
yeah.
Blue Sky or what's
No,
the?
no, you can. Well, I'm more blue sky now.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
these
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, well, sorry, I
I've,
say that. I have a
uh,
Blue Sky account, but I haven't. People keep
yeah,
saying
I
it's
have a
great
blue
for
sky.
science.
Yeah, I have a blue sky account. I don't, I was on Twitter for a long time, and then don't really do much with LinkedIn, to be honest.
Hmm.
And increasingly lately, not doing anything on Twitter. I'm just
Hmm.
watching to see what happens with the blue sky at the moment. Really.
Yeah, I hope it's.
I wish I had more time. I just wish I had more time.
Yeah, it's more
But
time. It's also how I've discovered. I mean, I've definitely been pulling back from the social media a lot recently myself. Just I'll literally use it as a promotional tool now, which I feel a bit guilty about because you sort of want to be. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I entertain. That's what I'm supposed to do. But at the same time, I'm finding I'm not entertained. I'm finding I'm getting sucked into stuff that I even today going to post my tweet about us doing our
yeah.
chat. I got sidelined by a couple of posts from a giant orange guy, and you find yourself going like spiraling. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I was getting, for some reason I wasn't even getting that kind of stuff. I was just getting porn and God knows whatever else, and it was just
Hmm.
horrible.
I get
I
crypto.
just
That's my big one is
stopped.
crypto because I
Just
took an
stopped.
interest.
It was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
not nice,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah. Stop.
And so it wasn't a conscious decision. It was more like it just happened. It was like, I don't want to do that. No, no thanks.
No, I'm
So
afraid I've somehow
yeah,
stepped
it
into
was
the
nice.
politics, and all of a sudden everything is outrage, and yeah. So
Yeah, it's not a nice place these days, and I think um, it's like everything. It goes through cycles, and
yeah.
probably this is the sort of the sort of well that kind of stuff cycle, and
Mm.
it'll clean up, and then we'll go back to some kind of mellow, and then it'll mature a bit more, and we'll find some status quo where everybody's happy in different fora, and
Or
it'll
we'll all
work.
head back to CompuServe. You know.
Oh, maybe not. Or we'll be on modems again. But
That's oh God, no, please. I told
the
you
dystopian
Wi-Fi.
world of
It's all
the
Wi-Fi.
dystopian world of the dystopian world of mega cities with depending whether you're on the inside or the outside. I mean, the modem might be back,
Well, it'll be a satellite
and you
modem
connected.
probably, but that's yeah, yeah.
Ah, it's true.
You know.
Those are quite good.
I know. I mean, reluctantly. I'm afraid. Like we're talking about my wife's father's place is in Warwickshire. Beautiful part of Warwickshire,
Yeah.
and one of the only things that's making me nervous about moving back there is they don't have the highest speed internet, so I may have to resort to satellites. So yeah, 9600 baud modem. I don't think so. It's a full time job. Yeah, I don't think so.
Oh, I don't think
Yeah.
so.
Craig, thank you so much. This has been like honestly, I'm so excited now. I feel like I want to read the internet about oceans. Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for taking your time, especially when you're there with 6 sons and things. So really, really appreciate it. And I hope that all works out beautifully, whatever it is.
Yeah, me too. Great to talk to you.
Yeah, pleasure indeed. I'll knock us offline so that we're not broadcasting, and then you and I'll just say a proper thank you without,
And if people want to contact me, no problem. Just look me up at the European Space Agency.
I'll put some links in the description as well.
Yeah, I'll try and answer your questions, but I'll do my best.
Very good. My best. Yes. Well, thank you. You've already done more than you needed to do. This is wonderful. So, all right, everyone. We'll be back again next week. I will say until we geek again, be kind, be brave, be brilliant, and cheerio. Thanks again, Craig. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Agni, for putting this together, by the way. Yes. Yeah.